When it comes to selling hardware, most MSPs fall into one of two camps. Camp one is they sell it because they feel like they have to, or they feel like there's good margin in it. The second camp is like, I don't really like it because it's a pain in the butt, so I'm just not going to do it, right? So no matter where you fall, you might have some questions as it relates to hardware. Questions like, should I sell hardware at all? What happens if a client wants to buy their own? Should I charge margin on it? How much margin should I charge? Things like, what happens if a client price shops me? Those kinds of things. If those questions are in your mind, this video is for you. My name is Adam Hanneman, and welcome to Ramblings of a Geek. I've been in the MSP space for the better part of the last couple decades, and I've seen hardware sales go well, and I've seen them go not so well. So that's what we're talking about on today's ramble. So let's head out. One of the stories that comes to mind from my past experience is that we had a client that was trying to buy a number of small form factor devices to replace some aging hardware, and they wanted to order them themselves, and we didn't love the idea. In fact, we tried to talk them out of it a couple different times, but ultimately they said that we were going to order them from somebody else no matter what, and we said fine, we'll deal with it. And so they ordered a bunch of hardware, and then when it showed up, we discovered that they all had spinning drives instead of solid state drives, and we had definitely recommended solid state drives because this isn't all that long ago. And we said, hey, client, your people are going to be frustrated by this. These machines are going to be slow. And they said, no, it'll be fine. They won't even notice. And we said, okay, fine. And we deployed them. And it wasn't but a few hours later that we got our first ticket. Hey, this new computer's slower than my old computer. Why is that? What's going on? All right. And we had ticket after ticket after ticket on all of these new machines. And we went back to the client and said, hey, problem, guys. This is a big problem for us. So we need to solve for this. We need to make this better. And they said, okay, fine, because they understood that they couldn't have 10 or 15 irritated users with brand new machines. And so we ultimately swapped out all of their spinning drives to solid state drives, and we did it all at the client's cost. Right? They needed to pay for all of the new SSDs, and they needed to pay for all the labor to swap them out and re-onboard all the machines. So it ended up costing them a whole lot more than had they just listened to us in the first place, right? And this is a thing that happens frequently, where a client will buy the wrong thing, and it's up to the client to solve for that, not up to the MSP. Now you might do the labor, but you need to charge for the labor, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about today, is trying to make sure that we set our clients up for success while minimizing some of the risk to us as well. The first question is, should I even sell hardware? Here's the deal. In working with a bunch of MSPs in my tenure, hardware margins typically flow straight through to the bottom line profit. So there's definitely a financial incentive to do so. If your clients are routinely buying hardware from somebody, it might as well be you. If your MSP is small, but you're planning on growing, I think this is a process to develop now because it allows you to scale that along as you grow. Obviously, you don't have to listen to some guy on the internet. So if you don't want to sell hardware, don't. But the reality is that if your clients are buying enough, you could take a little bit of a mental notice to how much hardware they're buying, not understanding that if there's margin attached to that, you're missing out. And at some point, you might change your mind. So it's still worth thinking about. Whether you order the hardware or not, make sure that you're charging your time for it, right? If it's an all-you-can-eat agreement, it's just going to go on the agreement. And if it's billable by the hour, you certainly should be billing for the time, because your expertise is your value add. Making sure that they're ordering the right thing from you, making sure that they're going to get the right stuff that's going to last a long time, is one of your big value adds to the situation. Also note that I'm only talking about ordering hardware sort of at time of need, not doing things like managing inventory and those kinds of things. I might talk about that in a different video, but it's a little bit out of scope for today's conversation. So if you're selling hardware, how much should you charge? What should your margins be? What should your market be? And those kinds of things. Well, the short version of this is I think you should aim at 20% margin for your hardware purchases. To get 20% margin, you need to mark things up by 25%. If you remember in my markup leads to margin video, 25% markup is exactly 20% margin. I'm actually seeing some MSPs go a little north of 20% on the margin side of the world, so know that there's a little bit of a sliding scale. There's also a sliding scale downward as well, especially if you order a lot of Apple products and or Microsoft Surfaces. Those are two categories of products where the margin's a little bit harder to deal with, but when you spread it across all of the different types of hardware that you sell, it should level off to about 20 to 25% margin. One thing I really think you should avoid is selling hardware at cost or just a little bit of margin. You might actually be working against yourself if you're doing it that way. So don't sell hardware for cost. Don't sell it for just tiny bits of margin. Now, you could give a one-time discount depending on what's going on, but you don't want to make that your standard operating procedure. If you're ordering hardware within your managed services model, it's important to make sure you understand your contract as well, because most managed services contracts are for supporting the existing infrastructure only. Adding new hardware is not existing infrastructure, so there may be some onboarding fees and or time and materials related fees that kind of go along with it. Also, if this is a break fix client or most of your clients are break fix, you're going to need to bill for all of that time as well, right? This is an important part of all of that. The next logical question is, how do you mark things up without gouging your clients? Because you definitely don't want to gouge your clients. And so the easy answer here is just build a relationship with a hardware distributor, or maybe two distributors depending on what's going on. And so when you do that, when you build a relationship with a distributor, you can buy things at wholesale prices. You then can turn around and sell it to your clients at retail, and usually there's margin built into that. There's some additional ways to build margin in as well, and part of it comes from doing things like registering deals. So do that whenever you can. Also, there's oftentimes distributors have certification paths and stuff where you can get some additional discounts. And as you order more hardware for your clients, usually you'll kind of tier up in the distributor's model. And so over time, you will end up building more margin just by building that relationship. So make sure you're working the programs within your distributor to make sure you're getting the maximum benefit from them. If you're getting some value from this video, I would really appreciate it if you would go ahead and hit that like button. It does help me quite a bit on YouTube. The next section here is you cannot be your client's bank. You don't float your client's hardware. If they order hardware from you, you need to invoice them before you order it. In fact, in some cases, I wouldn't even order it until they pay for part of it or all of it, especially if you're ordering a lot of hardware. So if you're ordering $5,000 or $10,000 worth of hardware, I would probably require some sort of a down payment, maybe even 100% down payment. Your clients can't go into a big box store and leave with some laptops with just giving them a bunch of IOUs, right? You are responsible for running your business and managing your cash flow. Don't hamstring yourself because you're too nice to your clients. So what happens if my client wants to buy hardware on their own, right? They won't listen, or they just insist on buying hardware on their own. Generally speaking, clients want to order hardware on their own when they think that they can save some money doing so. Your clients need to understand that when they order hardware from you, you stand behind the purchase. When they order hardware on their own, they are taking on the additional risk of ordering the wrong thing, dealing with warranty issues, and just kind of overall having to own that responsibility matrix. And you, as an MSP, want to own that responsibility matrix because you are better equipped to do so. So think back to my story earlier on in this video, right? If the client orders the wrong thing, they order this spinning drives versus solid state drives, it's going to be incumbent on the client to ultimately fix the issue. Now, they may fix the issue by paying you more to fix it for them, but it becomes incumbent on them to solve that problem, not necessarily you. So when they order on their own, they take on all of that additional risk. But let's say you've had conversations with a client and you just can't convince them otherwise, right? What do? You have a couple options. The first one is you give them the SKU, give them a link, whatever, and just charge them your normal onboarding fee and just kind of move on. Bonus points if you can give them an affiliate link or something where you get a little bit back on it. The second thing is just let them order the equipment and bill them by the hour, right? Especially if they're a break fix client. The third option is don't, right? No is a complete sentence. You don't have to. It might negatively impact your relationship with the client, but ultimately, I think a lot of this stems from how you set that relationship up early in the process, right? If the client expects to order hardware from you and you set the expectation early, you're in a much better spot than if you let them kind of do whatever they want for a while and then you try to change the model, right? So if you are a little bit more rigid and a little bit more strict about it early on, I think you're going to be set up for success later on. But no matter what you do, remember the time to investigate the hardware to order, put together the links, and give them the information is all billable time. They are paying you for your expertise. Your expertise is the value that you bring to this relationship. So make sure you're being paid for that at the very minimum. Ordering hardware and dealing with this hardware stuff can be a little bit like a choose your own adventure book because you can go in a number of different paths. And no matter which direction you pick, hopefully you're able to make your clients be a little bit more efficient, put some more money in your pocket, and ultimately make your business a little bit more efficient. If you do all those things well, you've chosen wisely. Thanks for coming on this roundtable with me, and I hope to see you on the next one.